This video is intended to describe a lightblade wand named Abundance of the 38th rendition of 2025 in a very dynamic high-yield variation of the typical tried-and-true platform at this point, thereby being a very high-yield, potent variant of extreme concentration and exotic crystalline nature, which will take a while to describe in full detail. So, without further ado, I shall be discussing the blade band scaffolding, and before I do that, this would be my whimsical stick figure chakra map, which I'll be utilizing for various chakra stimulation Q throughout this very vast, complexive crystalline closed-loop circuit. The blade band scaffolding is developed to run a ignition sequence that vaguely resembles a figure 8, like so, going laterally, as well as the sides underneath this green leather. Then the primary blade band, that would be considered the abundance ratio, is at the very apex of the focus of the device to vaguely resemble a figure 8 for perpetual recirculation of energy in a very smooth, reciprocal fashion. Starting off with the transmutation ratio, consisting of both hematite and smoky quartz, which runs the ignition sequence seen exactly like this, running under the leather the exact same way, with larger specimens of hematite and smoky quartz at the very engine of the construct to be the transmutation scaffolding. So hematite is the fantastic iron-based mineral that grounds all excess energy very firmly through the root chakra into the earth stars and into the earth star meridian matrix for processing, in tandem with smoky quartz to provide the same energetic stimulation pathway function in tandem with the hematite to once again take, like composting, to take all excess stray radial energies and firmly ground it through the root chakra into the earth stars and into the earth star meridian matrix for reprocessing, which basically, of course, works as a very fantastic way to simply work as etheric dialysis and purification to constantly ground the energy in the earth for rapid discharge, so it discourages negativity from staying inside the auric field through that basically midwife husbandry, if you would, of earth energy recirculation to transmute energy. So by itself, it already works as a very critical function for any given spirit tool, but where it really shines here in this construct is the working as a contingency to ensure the grounded contact patch of this scaffolding completing its circuit has a very strong grounding into the earth meridian matrix for many purposes, of course, to A, encourage the magic to become more real and tangible, as well as B, to discharge all the excess high yield of this device's potential yield capacity to firmly anchor the earth as a safety measure as well. For this is a very, very high yield variant of this tried and true platform of the 38th rendition thus far of Abundance, as almost you can consider it a very powerful anniversary race car edition, as a little bit of a joke. So that's why I mentioned the transmutation ratio first as a good foundational preface to have the scaffolding of the foundation very well addressed first before this, not ridiculous, it is kind of ridiculous, the complex high vibratory variation is fully notarized. So like I mentioned, this ignition sequence is running under this lovely green leather for a hand band, grounding into its lateral band, and looks like so. So this whole quadrant would be that of the transmutation ratio. And next I'll be discussing what indeed is deemed the abundance ratio of the 38th degree at this point. Starting off with 8 clear quartz grounded into the transmutation lateral band seen right here, because 8 is an essential number of abundance, as well as a, of course, great homage of infinity recirculation. So the clear quartz works as a neutral accelerant of the energy as it runs into root telated quartz to serve as a massive accelerant in between each of these nodes, which is basically clear quartz with bands of titanium dioxide in it, which work as a massive supercharger of intensifying ambient frequencies. Going into moss green agate, the most stabilized green ray heart chakra stabilizer in the mineral kingdom, which is very advantageous for such a massive exaggeration of the heart chakra capacity that is the abundance ratio. I'll describe more of that once I notarize the other 2 green components of this ignition sequence. Then going into golden healer quartz, a fantastic gold white light, high heart source alignment frequency, which is inherently self-evidently advantageous for the spiritual adept to have a clean alignment frequency of source energy, particularly in tandem with the high green ray concentration of a terrestrial heart chakra stimulant, that of the abundance ratio, to quite simply, theoretically, that is, make a holy grail resonance source alignment compatibility with the physical heart, to make it real, like a new earth portal. Then going from the golden healer quartz into peridot, a very fantastic stone of praise and antiquity, just like emerald, of being a fantastic stone of abundance as a great third and fourth chakra stimulant, as well as the frequency equivalent, in my opinion, of chlorophyll. How, of course, growth all occurs is that aspect. So quite simply, this is a great growth frequency, very, very critical for the functioning abundance ratio. Then going into rutilated quartz once again to massively accelerate into the legendary emerald. Emerald is the unsurpassed king and queen of the green ray stones of antiquity, of abundance, and royal utilization, of course. And so that is a very powerful heart chakra stimulant of the beryl family, of a very dense atomical structure of 8.5 out of 10, the hardness scale, which means its atomical vibration is very dense and very strong in the green ray heart chakra capacity. Then going back into golden healer quartz to be another source alignment node. Then, of course, it becomes more relevant with the aspect of moss green agate playing a very critical role to quite simply stabilize the wavelength of this massive exaggeration of source-aligned heart chakra activation, to, of course, encourage the stability and continuity of making the abundance real and consistent and stable and tangible, so that it does not distort the wavelength with erratic ups and downs, if you would. It kind of basically smooths out the cosine, if you would, of the receptivity of the abundance ratio, which is a quite critical role to, of course, ensure stability in this whole very, very high yield potent variation of this construct. So now that these guys have been well notarized, the ignition sequence runs like so with the moss green agate, the rutilated quartz, the peridot, the golden healer quartz, and the emerald, and so on, in that exact ignition sequence before it goes back into the 8 clear quartz down here, which ground back into the transmutation scaffolding to encourage the perpetual momentum of this very exotic heart chakra abundance expansion, to give a grounded contact patch to indeed encourage the magic becoming real, which will be very important. The transmutation scaffolding will be quite the highlight for this very, very high yield construct, which will take me a while to discuss the primary blade face, because I'll discuss the complexities of the engine first, but at least gives kind of a preface. And since I'm discussing blade bands, I'll discuss these lateral bands before I discuss anything else. So right here is a very, very soothing, angelic, inspired high-frequency stimulant of both rutilated quartz to once again intensify the lateral frequency grounded into the transmutation ratio, into infinitite. Infinitite is a very special variety of serpentine that has more of an angelic connection frequency contact, which also works as a kundalini stimulant, as a very powerful cellular respiration agent to, of course, heal any weak points or auric field that manifest as dis-ease, as well as it makes for a fantastic etheric insulation of any auric field densities. So you can think of it as another layer of etheric Teflon or psychic protection further, and it truly excels is decrystallizing patterns of the lower chakras that be stagnated from imprintations and family karmic dynamics that are of restrictive patterns that basically, of course, impede one's abundance naturally. A lot of these themes will be very relevant here as a very concentrated, unified device. Then once again, rutilated quartz to intensify into the seraphinite, which is found actually in more than one place, up by the blade face, as well as here, because the seraphinite has a very critical feature of being a very dynamic master healer to be employed to the maximum of this magnum opus of 8 abundance construct. So seraphinite is a very fantastic full light body activator from bottom to top to dismantle any patterns of dis-ease very, very effectively with imbuement of seraphic aligned frequencies. You can think of the great seraphim of Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel being in very much tuned resonance with this frequency to be a more tangible third-dimensional cellular respiration alignment, which is very, very advantageous for any true aspirant of the practitioner, if you would, obviously, inherently. And that's why, of course, that master healer is part of a trinity, which I will discuss in proper turn, of great high-frequency master healers that work fantastic in vibrational compound interest for a combined goal of being a very dynamic utilitarian light body dis-ease dismantler, which of course will come in turn. Then ruthlite quartz, then going to the infinitite and so on, as seen on both sides to be a lateral band auxiliary frequency before it completes its entire sequence of figure 8 back and forth. Then this lateral band is quite critical for such a very high yield, dynamic, full range, impactfully high frequency device is this lateral band of the coherence ratio. So obviously with this much intensive magical power potentiality, encouraging impeccable coherence is of the absolute utmost importance, obviously, so it's of course wielded with coherent alignment innately in its operational structure. Starting off with the quintessential stone of order, fluorite in the mineral kingdom, that works fantastic as a wind elemental, 6th and 7th organizer of the mind and the higher chakras, as well as a fantastic way, once again, to bring it up is that it has a very coherent wavelength that, of course, resonates with the homomorphic field of the human to encourage impeccable mental coherence, which is even more critical with very, very high yield amounts of energy running through the auric field template as, fashion that's very, very exotic to most mortals, if you would. Then ruthlite quartz, once again, to be a massive accelerant into the classic and famous turquoise. Turquoise, of course, the 5th chakra stone of great antiquity and great notarization and praise, which I will omit most of the lore of that because it'd take probably 10 more minutes to discuss the entire notarization of that construct. But the aspect of turquoise is simply works as a perfect 5th chakra elemental stimulant for the throat chakra, and it combines the elements of earth, fire, water, and wind of the 4 terrestrial Lakota elements to be a wholeness of truth of who one is in creation, which of course goes great in tandem with the concept of coherent alignment to be in resonance and alignment with one's true quantum inheritance, who they are, before the implementations of various limitations, beliefs, and family dharmic patterns have compromised the operating system, to put it pragmatically. And going like so until it completes the sequence, which is of course grounded into the transmutation scaffolding to encourage the rapid ground of this very, very dynamic high-yield construct seen on both sides. So this section would be technically where the engine is, where it's quite complex. And before I discuss the intricacies that will take a while, naturally, of this entire composition down here, I will discuss the function of this white leather, seen right here, as well as this iconography of ancient Egyptian honoring, seen right here, which of course plays an intrinsically critical role for the recipient's dharmic template. So, before I discuss the intricacies, I will discuss the functionality of this white leather, which indeed has a function that's far more than aesthetic. So the idea of having the white leather here, which unfortunately will conceal these stones, but is indeed a functional purpose for efficiency. I wanted to highlight that before I continue further. So when, of course, this is installed in a very aesthetic fashion, it has many purposes. So this right here, of course, is white, which works as a color therapy resonance of course, the 7 rays diffused in one singular focus of white, which is all the spectrums, which is very encouraging for the full chakra engagement from that color therapy filter as well. And also, it works to insulate this entire complexive network of crystals seen right here, so that the energy is more encouraged to have insulation, so it's more efficient through the blade band down right here. So of course, essentially what that means, to put it simply, is it mitigates energy leakages from this very vast, intense, complexive, high yield section. So the energy is more efficiently governed and contained and recirculated through the entire construct for more dynamic, efficient energy recirculation. As well as a way to, of course, protect all these subtle stones, seen like so they do not, of course, run away, like losing organs of an entity, if you would. And that is indeed like the purpose of it. And of course, once it's fully correctly installed, it does have a nice aesthetic feature. And once that is installed, these 3 various Egyptian magical symbols will be installed in a fashion that, of course, look symmetrical as possible. But I'll discuss them in brief right now, of course, of classically the Eye of Horus, as well as the Ankh, with many cartouches, or shins, as they would call them actually, with miniature magical Egyptian symbols engraved in the Ankh with the scarab beetle, which is pretty fabulous. As well as a standalone scarab beetle, which is the quintessential symbolism of resurrection rebirth, which of course is very indicative of this device's intentional high yield miracle magic function, to put it quite pragmatically. And so that would be the white leather, and as well as the iconography discussed. Got that out of the way. Now, without further ado, we'll be discussing the complexities of the engine section, which will be quite vast and quite dynamic. So starting off with the clear quartz agate right here of Lemurian root crystal, which is a very fantastic main heart of the construct that has now been pretty much very well concealed by many other components auxiliary in the primary wire, which works as the main heart or engine of the construct, which also works as a neutral ambient accelerant of one's conscious impulse energy intention, which of course can put this device in the realm of consciousness assisted technology to of course amplify and drive anyone's higher self spiritual nature into the tangible form, to amplify it into the third dimensional wavelength. Basically, to kind of be an etheric lightning rod for directional purpose would be pretty sufficient to put in layman's terms. So that's why the clear quartz is mentioned first as a very critical component right here of course, working in tandem with one's higher self soul power. Intangibility is the endeavor here. And before I discuss anything else, I'll go ahead and discuss this critical feature as a great preface for this very complex section concerning the jasper and the agates seen right here. So of that matter, jaspers and agates are the most stabilized vibrations of various color spectrums and elemental correspondences in the mineral kingdom. Gotta clear my throat for this one. So starting off with red jasper is a quintessential root chakra stabilization of earth energy, unsurpassed in the mineral kingdom just about for that purpose, which of course is very advantageous for stability's sake. Then going into fire agate, which is the most stabilized fire stimulant of the root, sacrum, and solar plexus, the lower three chakras, in the most stable fashion. Can't emphasize the importance of that enough, particularly with a high yield dynamic construct. Then going into moss green agate in a larger chunk, much like the component in the blade band for this purpose, to be a green ray water elemental stabilization of the heart chakra. Then going into blue lace agate, which is the water elemental blue ray stabilization agent of the fifth chakra. Then going into a very truly special and rare crystal named holly blue agate, even though it is indeed a purple violet ray agate to stabilize wind, 6th and 7th chakras. So when you take that continuity of earth, the terrestrial four elements that are of course indicative of the Lakota medicine wheel, that would stabilize earth, fire, water, and wind as just part of the subroutine for maximum consistent equilibrium. Because the aspects of stability with high yield frequency devices that could be considered devices of theurgy and magic, stability is very, very critical, as far as I'm concerned, for efficiency of fulfilling a dharmic blueprint. So that's exactly why I discuss these guys with great importance as a great contingency and as well as an equilibrium efficiency. Then I will discuss these rather exotic components down here that are pretty well concealed against the very apex of the engine band, if you would. Starting off with zircon. Zircon is a very special full light body activator that is quite the dynamic stimulant to other frequencies, as well as being a massive boon to the entire chakra column as a whole. It has a very high focused stimulation of the entire nodes. There's not a single exclusion in the chakra column stimulation. It hits the entire node from top to bottom in a very visceral and vivid fashion of extreme stimulation, which is very strengthening to the light body, anchoring tangibly into the conscious self, which is very advantageous for this very ambitious purpose. And actually, of course, I might as well discuss this as well, is that any of these frequencies mentioned thus far have been grounded via wire into the primary wire, which works as a main vein for the construct. that of course runs through the entire ignition sequence seen up here with the primary wire, which is like the main vein, like I said, to work as a great foundation for all these crystals to harmonize and resonate together to generate significant vibrational compound interest as a entity with many crystalline organs, to put it quite simply. Then right here would be another dynamic, explosively powerful crystal named zincite that's quite rare these days, of the golden ray. So zincite is perhaps the most explosively hurricane activating format of the lower 3 chakra activation. It's very discouraging for any stagnancies that would be impeding one's lower 3 chakras, and a very dynamic cardinal fire explosive way to put one really in touch with the creative power of their innate dharmic blueprint, as well as that of the emanations of creation with creativity. So that's a very, very, very powerful placement, as well as the zircon works in determination to massively amplify that guy, which goes into the selenite, which of course I'll just have to discuss that later because there's a lot to discuss here and keep coherent and linear, obviously, which is not as easy as it looks. On the back side of the zincite right here, as well as the zircon, is another very, very special variety of crystal named Herkimer diamond with carbon inclusions. It is a relatively large specimen that actually works as a massive accelerant of other frequencies as well. So there's basically 2 massive accelerants in tandem with the zircon and the Herkimer diamond, both making a massive intensification for the bottom engine subroutine before it goes through the entire complex matrix of this device. So Herkimer diamond is from Herkimer, New York, and is quite the famous spectrum of clear quartz that is a very, very, very high frequency stimulant of the higher chakras as well as spiritual unification. But where it really shines, of course, in the aspect of independently, it's a very high vibration crystal of great stimulation of the higher chakras, but it also works as a massive accelerant and amplification agent to other frequencies in a closed loop tandem. Then down here, next to the Herkimer diamond and the zircon intentionally is star argonite, which is one of the 3 crystals I utilize as a holy trinity, if you would, of master dynamic full light body healing stimulants. That would be a fantastic agent, just like the seraphinite works very diligently of a calcium nature to clear any patterns from bottom to top and dismantle any stagnancies in auric field that would manifest as a dis-ease in a physical manifestation. Hence, that guy is quite critical at the engine apex right there. And I'll go ahead and discuss the other cousin of the Holy Trinity right now, since it's one coherent topic, of the Tibetan black quartz. Tibetan black quartz, just like the seraphinite and the argonite mentioned so far from Tibet, is a fantastic full light body cement from bottom to top to clear any patterns of dis-ease and put one's alignment in the Om source resonance from its locality from Tibet, which of course is a region of the earth that has had nearly unbroken spiritual lineage of the Om frequency over many millennia in recorded history. And so it's very indicative of source alignment capacity that also doubles as a fantastic physical light body healer from, once again, bottom to top. So that trinity of the argonite, the Tibetan black quartz, and the seraphinite is a very fantastic trio of master healing capacity work exceptional together for tangible etheric cellular respiration reformation. And so they are quite simply a very, very well-utilized trio in many constructs, and that'd be why. So I'll go ahead and discuss these other auxiliary components right here to kind of round out this section before I flip back over. So right here will be Shiva Lingam, which is from India, which is a very, very famous full light body activator as well, and a Kundalini stimulant of the 4 elements, so actually we considered earth, fire, water, and wind, and storm, of a fantastic fertility agent that stimulates the entire auric field as well and encourages high yields of Kundalini activation, which is indicative of a fully functioning chakra column in alignment with one's divine blueprint configuration. Then right here would be a green ray crystal of great notarization, in my humble opinion, of prehnite, which is a very fantastic third and fourth chakra stimulant, as well as a fantastic master healing alignment crystal that brings extreme soothing, calming to the vibration of the auric field. And what I consider very special about this crystal is that I would, in my opinion, it makes a very clean frequency attunement to the Raphael force, or the Archangel Raphael, the great green Clohan of healing capacity of the Seraphim realm. So that indicatively right there makes a great subcapacitation of having further angelic energy run through this entire closed loop reactive circuit. Then right here would be Sedona Red Rock from a locality in Sedona, Arizona of high iron matrix, which makes for a very powerful grounding of high frequency energy, which of course encourages magic becoming real. Hence that place is very special, near to my heart, because of the high grounding capacity to encourage tangibility of high frequency magic. So a dose of Sedona. Then right here will be a large bolt of black tektite seen right here, which is a product of nickel meteorite impacting sands to consider this quintessentially a stone from heaven to earth of meteoric impact impacting sand with heat and pressure to actually vaporize the sand around to make a meteoric glass, a tektite. So black tektite is especially utilized in virtually all tech, despite the variations of platform for this utilitarian distinct purpose. So when you take the black tektite seen right here, it makes for a fantastic grounding of high frequency energy from luckily the Earth stars up to tangibly raise vibrations from a foundational scaffolding to raise vibrations from the ground up is a very indicative way to, of course, increase vibratory output of the auric field's resonance. So, of course, black tektite always plays a critical role in many various constructs, like I mentioned. And thank goodness, like I said 3 times so far, it's a black ray crystal that works to raise vibrations from the ground up. So it's a very good foundational spiritual dharmic accelerant, if not in that context. Then right here, this would be oceanic calcite harvested from the Oregon coast by yours truly, and is a fantastic homage of calcite, which is already a white ray full spectrum stagnation clear, which is tremendously underrated in crystalline healing in my opinion. But what makes this truly remarkable is the aspect that the ocean itself has really tumbled this stone for millennia, perhaps, hundreds of years at least, God knows how long, to actually shape this stone. Which means the indelible mark of the oceanic clearing capacity has really shaped this crystal, which everybody knows the ocean is a great master clearer of energy. So, of course, having that in there runs through the whole circuitry, etc., etc., etc. Alrighty, so I'll discuss this guy last as the ultimate capstone because it gets quite complex to put this in a coherent linear fashion. It's diverse utilization. And so I will go ahead and move back on to the classic ruby. A large dose of ruby, which works as the quintessential root chakra stimulant mineral kingdom of unsurpassed intensity, oftentimes the 8.5 or 9 out of 10 the hardness scale, of corundum red ray root chakra stimulation of great notarization and deification at this point in human history, that's been recorded at least, to be a very, very, very powerful gusto, zest for life, encouraging high frequency, which, of course, this piece was not enough, so there'll be discussed eventually another bolt of ruby over here in this sub-circuit. But staying on task, this ruby, of course, encourages the massive grounding enthusiasm of this very ambitious platform once again. Then going into this guy right here with lepidolite, which is a fantastic potassium lithium-based crystal, which has perhaps one of the most soothing emanations for the nervous system to be the ultimate anti-anxiety frequency to be employed, which of course is just very nice to have that in the background for this pillars of heaven shaking device, quite simply. So lepidolite makes for a nice soothing of the entire auric field based on its lithium content to bring extreme soothing to the muscles and the nervous system, with the potassium being a very nice calming to the nervous system as well. That was a mouthful. Then right here will be stitchtite, which is actually a purple variety, violet rather, of serpentine. So stitchtite is a very special variety of serpentine, much like its green red cousin, to be another light body as well as kundalini activator to encourage proper cellular respiration to one's healed patterns. But the stitchtite has a very special crown chakra stimulation, which is very encouraging to any densities that be impeding one's higher enlightenment capacities, as well as a way to insulate the auric field further from any densities that would be impeding one's dharmic template, quite simply, as another very vast supporting role for this concentrated goal of being a very overwhelming abundance device, to put it in a joking fashion. Then right back here is a very special stone, crystal, named Prophecy Stone, which is suspected to be the mother stone of Libyan gold tektite. And the aspect of why it's called Prophecy Stone is that this stone down here is found where Libyan gold tektite is, in remote centers of Libyan desert. And Prophecy Stone is named that because the rockhound, most likely looking for this crystal of antiquity seen right there of Libyan gold, found this crystal and had a massive, unexpected prophetic vision. And so the fun fact about this crystal is that it has aspects of pseudo-hematite, which could be considered an iron-based crystal much like hematite, with apparently, according to science, metals found in the structure that are not on our terrestrial periodic table, which means it indeed has space metal in it, which is a very fun fact. Which, of course, gives a very interesting otherworldly energy, which it can be considered to be a massive stone of prophetic encouragement to stimulate the 6th, 7th, non-physical chakras back to one's Godhead. But luckily, it has a strong iron base, which by itself works diligently to ground the energy through the Earth stars into the Earth for reprocessing. So, of course, by itself, it encourages making the high-frequency pathways real from top to bottom. Then, right here, I'll discuss these two in tandem, hence they are cousins. I'll start off with Scoicite as a very powerful, quintessential white ray stone divinity I utilize quite often for the purpose of being a very fantastic 6th and 7th, 8th non-physical chakra stimulant in a very soothing fashion of extreme divine mind alignment to be another fantastic inner peace agent to transcend the limitations of the ego-mind identity and put one in resonance with their divine perspective, which is very nice in a very soothing fashion. Then its cousin, Naturalite, which is a very extremely rare, hard to come by variant, and luckily the Will of the Force provided me this crystal for this blade right here through divine conspiracy, I'd say. Naturalite is perhaps one of the most powerful, at least top 3 most powerful third eye stimulants and crown stimulants of a very, very high nature that literally is a very dynamic, extremely powerful light body activator, which blasts right through the third chakra, the third eye, I should say, third eye chakra, the 6th chakra, the crown chakra, and the non-physical chakras with very dynamic, intensive stimulation of very high yield nature. So that's why, of course, it's something that's really remarkable as an extreme crystal enthusiast, to put it lightly. And of course, that frequency running through an entire blade band makes for a very dynamic high frequency pitch that virtually makes incompatible lower frequencies of darkness or divisatory constructs incompatible. So this also serves as a massive ultimate psychic protection frequency that literally almost melts divisatory lower frequencies in its presence, which is a very, very cool feature. Because obviously, an ounce prevention is 2 ounces of cure. If that resonant frequency can maintain a very high frequency node pitch in this sufficiently complex device, that would be a very, very, very advantageous disposition for the spiritual aspirant who this will go into the custody of. And that would be just basically it about the engine finally, which has taken a while, obviously, because there's quite a bit to notarize. Okay, last but certainly not least, which I saved for last intentionally, would be the smoky celestial quartz, which is a very vast meta topic as a disclaimer. So, like the structure of smoky quartz, it makes for a fantastic grounding of energy into the earth for processing, but where it truly shines for its dynamic utilization is the growth structure of celestial smoky quartz has a compatibility resonance with one's highest self that works like a dimmer switch or a regulator to auto-calibrate the frequency pitch based on whoever is wielding it, even besides the primary wielder who has been built for, to resonate the entire structure to be in equilibrium and harmony with one's higher self contact patch in the conscious self. I feel like that actually came out pretty smooth, because oftentimes I have almost a loss of words discussing the modality of this crystal based on its very far out complexive action that is actually quite critical as a surge protector to ensure the frequency pitch is always the right optimum frequency, so it doesn't encourage overcharges or fryouts, if you would, to encourage the resonant pitch to always be in perfect equilibrium harmonization auto calibration to whoever wields this construct, particularly the primary wielder, obviously. And so, of course, that governs the entire frequency pitch to be in a perfect equilibrium through the entire operating system to maintain that impeccable resonance, quite simply, which is very, very incredibly dynamic. And I'm very proud of myself for making that almost sound like it almost made sense without me struggling for the words. Silent progression. And so next, I will omit the selenite and the kyanite seen right here intentionally until I discuss them in bulk up here, which I will circle back to, of course. And right here, the kyanites, it's a very nice comprehensive capstone that gets quite complex to describe, so I will go ahead and circle back to this now. So without further ado, we're going to get to the business end of the construct finally. After that 35 minutes of just discussing the blade band and the engine so far. It's quite the endeavor to fully notarize. So I'll have to grab my special little book here to prop it so I can discuss the thumb engagement, which is its own extremely exotic, vast network of crystals in a circuit. And get the focus correct? Okay, so this is a rather exotic composition right here, which is designed to, like implied, for the thumb to actually engage like so to complete the sequence in tandem with a trigger down here, if you would, for the index finger to close the circuit like a mudra, except with crystalline structures. So the thumb engagement is a very vast, opulent, exotic nature, which will take a little bit to describe, but here we go. So I'll discuss the primary exterior band of the blue ray seen right here, consisting of clear quartz, which works the natural neutral accelerant of this closed loop circuit, going into the lovely legendary lapis lazuli, then clear quartz, then blue sapphire. So both of these crystals are extremely powerful, well-praised stimulants of the 5th and 6th chakras, which of course work fantastic in tandem to intensify the stimulation of the sapphire, being the blue ray cousin to emerald of a very hard nature, which means it has a very powerful stimulation pathway to one's highest truth, in tandem with the classic crystal of ancient Egyptian utilization of lapis, which of course, once again, is a 5th and 6th chakra stimulant of one's divine truth. So quite simply, that blade band out there is a very, very powerful spiritual alignment accelerant to one's true nature made obvious to the conscious self as just an auxiliary containment. Then on both ends of the nodes right here are two pieces of moldavite, which are very legendary crystals this day and age for being the quintessential dharmic accelerants of the green ray of hurricane force source alignment. Hence the stone's got quite the bad rap for being very, very caustic to the false self matrix that divides one from their divine blueprint. So by itself, it is inherently volatile, like a storm of acceleration of one's divine blueprint made manifest of rapidly changing one's life. Hence it has a bad rap on social media platforms such as TikTok and whatnot for people saying this magic crystal ruined their life, because indeed it does ruin the false self matrix alignment that divides one from their creator or divine blueprint, which makes it a quintessential stone of the Holy Grail. And so its legend is quite vast and steep and quite a mysterious space crystal that is very, very legendary, very beautiful, and also works as a massive vibrational threshold increase through an entire construct, obviously, all wrapped together for closed loop frequency vibrational compound interest. So that is quintessential dharmic acceleration on tap for the thumb to really put one in dramatic, quick alignment of one's dharmic self. But before I discuss these other extremely high vibrational dharmic accelerants, I will just circle back to the concept of having a very strong transmutation backbone to mitigate timeline whiplash and, of course, the negativity being stirred up by this storm of divine reformation has a safe pathway by design to be discharged in a very efficient manner, so that it basically works to expedite the alchemical crucible, to put it pragmatically, in conjunction with these stabilizing agents to ensure the smoothest transition possible by vibrational engineering design. I figure that's worth discussing, because efficiency is my life's work's goal, and tangibility, stability, of course. So, anyway, that'd be the the mold device mentioned thus far. Then, in the very center of this power pack of the thumb is a very exotic, specialized combination of tanzanite, seen right here. This blue ray crystal is the paramount heart-mind coherent stimulant in the mineral kingdom that stimulates the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th chakras, of making a very powerful, impeccable resonance of heart-mind coherence, which is very advantageous for being in one's heart's truth in all situations. It is perhaps one of the greatest goals of spiritual attainment, in my humble opinion, because the mind can only go so far as I'm concerned, and the heart has all the quantum compatibility of the original internet, of the Akashic records, if you would. So heart-mind coherence goes a very long way for this entire Blu-ray power pack for the thumb to encourage one's divine truth manifest in tangibility. Then next to the tanzanite, inside the same circuit, is a specimen of phenakite. Phenakite, like naturalite, is among the top 3 third eye busters, I dare say, that has a very dynamic summation of the third eye, the crown, and a very massive light body accelerant, and even a way to activate latent codons of DNA that are dormant in most humans in this timeline. So it is a quintessential divine white light cotton crystal form that really makes massive activation resonance of the auric field. But where it really truly shines also in a larger construct is that phenakite by itself has such a high, intense light spectrum resonance that it actually broadens the entire chakra column as a whole to tangibly ground more light through light body, which would be pretty biblical magic territory, I guess you could say, as a little joke. And so that's a very exotic, high-yield component for this very ambitious magnum opus of a construct. And to further make that even more opulent, to put it nicely, not so ostentatiously, around the tanzanite and the phenakite is actually a blade band of small, petite clear quartz and raw white diamonds, running a circuit under here, which has now been well concealed by the other components. So, of course, it has no risk of breakage at this point of the thin wire required to actually run a termination sequence of the diamond. And so that right there puts the white ray diamond around the phenakite and the tanzanite as a very massive 10 out of 10 white carbon-based spectrum of legend of diamond frequency, which of course is a crystal that is perhaps among the most famous precious stones humanity knows about. All mortals have heard of diamonds. Whether they give a fig about crystal vibrations or not, diamonds are very much a precious stone in human history and an agreed upon vibration. So that white ray spectrum of carbon also works to intensify the entire auric field with 10 out of 10 hardness, and works as a massive intensive accelerant to other frequencies as well. Hence, the tanzanite and the phenakite have been put in the border of the diamonds to make a massive intensification of a already very complexly intense high-frequency crystal phenakite and tanzanite to encourage one's true self manifesting in a very quick fashion, not to mention the moldites backing the whole endeavor. And so underneath the tanzanite and the phenakite, at the very base of this thumb engagement, probably seen from right here, yes, indeed, the clear quartz purine crystal, the very foundation of this, would actually be a very special crystal named Faden quartz, which is a specialized crystal that looks like it continuously breaks and restitches, which is growth pattern cycle simply does that. So by mimicking that resonance of the auric field, it already has a way to, of course, serve as equivalent of fix-a-flat for the auric field for any breaks in continuity to be rapidly stitched because it breaks and stitches. So, of course, mimicking that crystalline frequency works to solder any weak points auric field's continuity from top to bottom. which is a nice little another master healer that is neutrally amplified by the entire resonance of the construct. Yep, I have to clear my throat after that one. So once again, that would be the thumb engagement developed to be like so. And the other side, which serves as a perfect antithesis, which I will use my nifty book once again as a prop, to stand up like so, is the Sunstone Foundation right here. Sunstone's a very fantastic potassium feldspar-based crystal of fire energy. That's with the sacrum and solar plexus. They're very, very sunny, divine, enlightened masculine energy format, which is very much a stone of leadership, benevolence, and encouragement, and also what I consider to be the yang of the abundance, is to, of course, when you feel very, very good and confident, the reception intake of the yin of the green ray of abundance is encouraged by the output of sunstone, but that will be addressed more up here with these Libyan gold tektites, which I will save in turn. But the sunstone has been very, very critical in virtually, actually take it back, all abundance constructs have had a dose of sunstone to be a very critical element, to be the output positive vibrations to encourage the reception of good things. Because quite simply, how you feel and how you vibrate is what affects the quantum field. Therefore, how you vibrate, your base vibration of being positive encourages abundance situations to occur. So for a proactive divine masculine format, if you would. Anyhow, I think that's sufficient. So now, I'll be discussing the red ray blade band that's surrounding this sunstone that serves as a great red ray antithesis to the blue ray thumb engagement down here to be a perfect opposite, complementary wise. Going into the classic red ruby once again, the quintessential intensive root chakra stimulant of great legend. Going to clear course and neutrally accelerate into once again red jasper to quite simply be the most powerful stimulation and stabilization in tandem of the root chakra's functionality, which of course encourages the grounded dynamic of such a high yield, higher truth, quite simply very intensive higher chakra stimulant primary thumb engagement to be the perfect contingency by design. So that would be the somewhat of a trigger, if you would, to put it kind of a crude analogy, for the thumb, the index finger like so, to be engaged like that. Alrighty, so next will be the long dissertation of the blade face, starting now. So next to the trigger and the thumb engagement would be another dose of seraphinite seen on both sides. So of course the entire blade face of the focus is as symmetrical as possible for very clean vibrational resonance as an entire whole unit. So obviously the seraphinite paired on both sides works as another dose of that green ray full light body healing capacity that also encourages great emotional elasticity and works to dismantle any patterns that are out-mottled in the entire auric field, or basically one's false self matrix, in a very graceful, harmonious, full healing fashion. And hence it is definitely one of my top 5 favorite crystals, if I dare had to say so, because of its utilitarian, soothing, healing capacity for tangible, productive, but beneficent magic, if you would, to put it in an analogy. Alrighty. So next, I will be discussing the love currencies seen on both sides, which I believe the book is in proximity. It sure is. Okay. So love currencies seen on both sides. I've had the privilege of augmenting many specimens over this time period, the last few years, and it's encouraging the concept of a great wizard from Sedona, Mr. Stephen Kenobi, or Stephen A. Ross, of a very timeless message that he literally has commissioned and to be set into coin, of maintaining a beautiful heart, an open mind, and a humble spirit, and to do so with love, in love, and through love. So what makes this fun, of course, is the incorporation of this great, wonderful wizard and the privilege of making a morphic field augmentation to empower this entire concept as a sigil of magic, if you would, that goes through the entire resonance of this device, and of course is compatible with many devices in heavy distribution across the world at this point. And so this particular rendition has a full rainbow in spectrum engagement, starting off with the clear quartz going into red garnet, much like a equivalent to ruby, to stimulate the root chakra. So actually at a glance, all these crystals with clear quartz are designed to stimulate the entire rainbow spectrum of the light body around the coin in a centrifugal circuit, going from the garnet for the root chakra, carnelian for the sacrum, then tiger's eye for the root, sacrum, and solar plexus, then going into peridot, like mentioned before, for third and fourth chakra stimulation, emerald, fourth, aquamarine for the fourth and fifth, as well as turquoise, again, to be another fifth chakra stimulant, then going into lapis, of course, for fifth and sixth, and then classic amethyst for the sixth and seventh chakras, which of course is developed to be a full spectrum engagement, like I mentioned, in a centrifugal circuit before it goes into clear quartz into hematite, like mentioned on the transmutation band, to encourage the grounding of the entire yield of this full spectrum range, to once again encourage tangibility, to indeed ground it into reality, to make the magic real. It cannot be expressed enough of the criticality of that function. That's why, of course, both sides of the coin are represented here with matching identical blade sequences to, once again, be a full contained light body stimulant in its own right, with encouraging overtone of rapidly grounding it back into reality. Alrighty, so that would be, of course, Stephen A. Ross's fantastic love currency and another rather ambitious exotic platform, seen right there. With love, in love, and through love. So obviously it's very advantageous disposition to stay in resonance with, which is, I would consider critical in the endeavor of true spiritual service. Okay, almost 51 minutes later, I'm finally getting to the blade facing scene right here, which is quite the to-do to discuss in a long, coherent fashion, I guess you could say. So, right here on both sides, there will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fulgurites, as well as 6 fulgurites on this side, and 3 moldavites, Libyan gold tektites, and 3 Libyan gold tektites here for a very intensive, dynamic, powerful, focused action intention. So, fulgurite is literally petrified lightning. That is actually lightning striking sand, flash burning sand into a crystal. And what that means is that that particular frequency actually is the power of lightning that can be resonated with and particularly applied in a closed loop circuit. Very intensely powerful frequency crystal right there of fulgurite. So the aspect of fulgurite was utilized by shamans of antiquity to resonate with it, to intensify their energy field, to literally align the power of lightning, to intensify their prayers, to manifest magic becoming real. This was a shamanic spiritual of antiquity with great utilization, and quite simply, resonating with the power of lightning to intensify one's manifestations is a very vivid, powerful thing to do. So lightning by itself is a very lightning fast, of course, by resonance, activator of the entire chakra column that is very, very, very stimulating to the entire auric field from top to bottom with quite literally lightning force intensity, which of course works also as a massive manifestation agent, accelerant to intensify one's prayers or base vibration to, in theory, to put it lightly, encourage the aspects of theurgy, quantum matter manipulation, based on conscious observer effect, just like the famous locality concept of modern quantum physics discussing the observer effect, how the observer affects subatomic particles under viewing. So that would, of course, put one in very powerful observation malleability to literally change reality, to, I guess, put that somewhat pragmatically. Then, to join this intensive lightning concentration of extreme high yield focus would be the Libyan gold tektite seen right here. Of course, like I mentioned, as symmetrical as absolutely possible on both sides. So the Libyan gold tektite was actually a very, very special space-borne crystal utilized by the pharaohs of antiquity for the scarab beetles to be carved into breastplates that were indicative of their Magi God King badge of office. So Libyan gold tektite is a very, very, very powerful gold ray crystal that stimulates the sacrum, and the solar plexus as a cardinal fire energy, but also has a golden ray overtone that illuminates the entire auric field in virtually unsurpassed in the mineral kingdom. Hence, like I mentioned, one of my top 5 favorite crystals for its very enthusiastic gold-white light dynamic activation, which is a very, very good feeling crystal to really also serve as a massive dharmic accelerant, much like its cousin moldavite, vibrationally speaking wise, and also encourages one's true dharmic manifestations to actually come into tangibility. So it is one of the quintessential crystals of manifestation magic, in my humble opinion, and I absolutely adore the stuff. So the aspect of having an extreme concentration on the primary blade band really brings a very intensive, highlighted, vivid gold-white light focus to the entire emanation that would be, of course, in resonance with the Magi God King of antiquity of the High Wizards of Egypt, quite simply. And so it's a very special fun fact that gives it quite mystical connotations to already very Egyptian-honoring magical device. So I believe that would be sufficient for that. So coming up on the apex of the primary blade band would be a nice little purple ray cluster of starting off with chaurite. Chaurite is a very fantastic purple ray dharmic accelerant that stimulates the 6th, 7th chakras, typical of a violet spectrum wind elemental frequency crystal, but also with the inclusions of the dendric and the calcite also works for a very powerful grounding of high frequency wind through the earth stars independently of other auxiliary crystals to encourage the magic becoming real, as well as the calcite to clear any densities that be impeding one's dharmic template fully anchoring its conscious self into tangibility. So I would consider this perhaps my favorite violet ray crystal from its dynamic utilization of being a true encompassing full light-bodied dharmic accelerant to bring one's truest, highest synchronized path into obvious view. So it's a very fantastic purifier of etheric density as well. Like many other crystals, of course, there's a common theme with many of these constructs, and so that'd be the chaurite. Then to support that purple reactivation bubble of light would also be sugilite seen on both sides of the chaurite seen right here. Sugilite is a very fantastic wind elemental 6th, 7th, 8th non-physical chakra straight back to one's godhead that also works as a very fantastic psychic protection bubble of light, as well as a great stone of dreams to put one's conscious self in alignment with one's truest, highest, heart-centered dreams of their dharmic template realized in 3D reality. As well as it has a very nice clean frequency attunement to Michael or Michael the Archangel, which of course is a very advantageous natural attunement analog to have on tap. Michael is pretty fantastic, obviously. And so that would be that. And now I will be doing some of the final actions finally after this nearly an hour of this crystalline discussion, comprehensive tour. So next, I will be discussing the functions of the selenite seen right here and here. So oftentimes, the selenites usually are only on the primary blade face, but for this very dynamic, intensive construct, the selenite bolt with the kyanite right here was put in as much of a bit of a harmonization contingency, which I will describe right now with the black kyanite. So I will discuss the selenites now. So selenite by itself can be considered a great master healer frequency crystal that works as a very powerful 6th, 7th, 8th non-physical chakra stimulant back to one's godhead or the higher chakras as a two-way transponder, if you would, to clear off debris from one's conscious self to one's highest self, which makes a very, very advantageous spiritual adept frequency enhancer. But the aspect also with that high frequency induction also works for a very powerful transmutation agent of divine white light to burn stagnant energies from top to bottom through the entire auric field, which puts in the realm of being by itself truly a master healer. But where it really truly shines in this entire construct is this feature right here. So in nearly an hour's time of me discussing all these various crystals, all terminated on a closed loop reactive circuit, it has this function. It takes the entire crystal pitch mentioned thus far of nearly an hour. It works to basically purify all of these crystals in a closed loop circuit. It works to intensify or amplify this entire closed loop circuit. And perhaps most importantly, it brings harmonization and equilibrium to this very exotic crystalline pitch mentioned thus far, for a truly triumphant trifecta of spiritual efficiency in a vibrational engineering tool. So once again, the selenite works with all these crystals to purify, amplify, and harmonize this entire crystalline group. Hence down here why this is important with this very, very high yield dynamic engine, if you would. It works the same way to be its own independent part of the circuit for vibrational compound interest for efficiency to purify, amplify, and harmonize this entire crystalline pitch down here as well. And that's also why this black kyanite has been installed here, which I'll describe the kyanites right now. So kyanite is the most effective rapid transfer of energy in the mineral kingdom, the kyanite spectrums in general, but the black ray kyanite is the absolute most rapid grounder into the earth as absolutely quick as possible. Hence my whimsical penmanship is doing my best to illustrate how quickly it takes a frequency pitch and rapidly grounds the excess energy into the earth for many viable intended purposes. To A, be a contingency, to look like a surge protector, so the excess energy always has a safe pathway into the earth as absolutely quick as possible for a surge protector, as well as a rapid agent to indeed encourage making the magic real in its own right. So that'd be the black kyanite mentioned there, and there on top of the selenite. Next will be the orange kyanite, which is a very rapid sacrum stimulant of the highest capacity to make rapid bridges of stagnated patterns to, of course, encourage one's divine creativity in a very high, obvious highlight. Then would also be the green kyanite seen right here, which is the most rapid transfer of the green ray of energy to rapidly expand the heart chakra between the highest capacity one's dharmic self, as well as connections between others. It's a very dynamic, rapid transfer crystal. Then the blue kyanite works as a very powerful third eye stimulant to work very diligently, very quickly to bridge past restrictive patterns that could be found in cross interference between the right and left hemispheres, which of course would be impeding one's true third eye functionality. So the four in tandem are quite powerful for very rapid transferability of the energy of this entire construct, as well as it serves as another layer of etheric Teflon that is very discouraging for stagnant lower vibrations to stick to the field from top to bottom. So it has many functions, as well as, of course, a way to make a very strong transferability of this energy into tangible purposes. Speaking of that transferability, I will now discuss the focalizers seen right here, starting off with tangerine quartz, seen right here at the very backdraft, focalized towards the hand when engaged, of course, to direct that orange ray frequency creativity into the reception when engaged. Tangerine quartz is a very fantastic sacrum stimulant that is very, very encouraging and sunny for encouraging very creative endeavors. And of course, with abundance, it's very, very encouraging to have that orange and the green to be a very feel good to receive good, quite simply, once again. Then this right here will be titanium aura quartz installed between the two right here. So titanium aura quartz is a fantastic product of modern alchemy of pressure coating titanium on quartz, which works as a very powerful rainbow light body stimulant from top to bottom and a very strengthening frequency to the entire auric field to maintain energetic integrity, or another layer of insulation, if you would. Then that is terminated to the backside of these Lemurian clear quartz, which are the absolute focalizers of the energy. So this entire quadrant of these blade band focalizers, of course, have been grounded into the primary wire, so it can capitalize on the closed loop figure 8 reactive circuit and give it more of a directional focus of the energy via intention of clear quartz. So for example, the aspect of that purpose, of course, to take this frequency and to direct my buddy back here to make a closed loop containment to actually make a resonance alignment with this guy right here, for example, is the functionality of taking the excess energy of this entire complex of construct and giving it a directional focus to make an alignment and a discharge, quite simply. So that would be the focalizers, and my goodness, after an hour and 4 minutes, I think I've nearly done it. So that would be the entirety of the crystalline composition. And the core of the wood itself actually is sycamore from Sedona, Arizona, which is a very, very special spot. That's actually, the tree itself is very abundant, for it is a very tall, beautiful sycamore tree that actually is grounded into the Oak Creek, which is a 24/7 all year round waterway. So even the donor of the core of this wood ray device is a very abundant, happy tree because he never goes thirsty, or she never goes thirsty, which is a very fun fact. So that'd be the sycamore, and the secondary core that actually is adhered right here to the second core with screws combining the two woods is oak from here at Mount Shasta, from my good buddy in my backyard right here, who I visit pretty regularly for various oak sticks that he drops on the ground for me. And that'd be the combination of both Sedona and a very prominent waterway abundance frequency in tandem with the stability of oak found here in Mount Shasta. So the combination of the two wood ranges work very, very powerfully together, of two very potent energetic power spots found on the earth that luckily I have access to both ranges of wood. And that would be the core of the device. And I do believe that was basically it. So to summarize the entire construct, an hour and 6 minutes later, there's no way it was going to be a short dissertation. I knew that from the get-go. It is quite simply a very dynamically focused abundance platform. Like I've mentioned, there are 37 predecessors, operational and distribution of this particular frequency, but this is definitely a very ridiculously high yield homage of the same platform, which serves as a massive abundance accelerant by vibrational design, as well as a very, very potent dynamic full light body activator for very utilitarian purposes of a very dynamic full range spectrum device of virtually endless utilization, to put it quite simply. And I do believe that would be actually it. All right, well, 1,000 blessings, and may the force be with us all.